What's up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back. This is the Deep Corner, episode 16. I'm Rob St. Clair, and this is a very special episode. Pleased to be joined by a man who also wears the number 16, middle blocker for the Chicago Icemen, Mr. Dave Hancock. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Rob. Excited to be here.
So this is one I've been looking forward to. You and I go quite a few years back. We played 3 years together in college club at the greatest university of all time, at Purdue.
Yep.
I'm rocking the Purdue shirt right now. Your
Spoiler
signature is
up.
on my jersey in the back there that people can see. Uh, so yeah, we've been doing volleyball stuff together for a long time, and here we are both with some involvement in the VLA, and you're a kind of a rising star at the middle blocker spot. So uh, I want to talk about all kinds of just random stuff. It'll be pretty informal. This will be fun. Shout outs to all of our Purdue teammates, obviously listening. We're gonna make
Oh
sure
yeah,
make sure the boys get to hear this.
of course, of course. Yeah, no, excited to talk about our long history.
hmm So when I was a junior at Purdue, we had just come off of winning a Big Ten championship my sophomore year. We returned a lot of good pieces. We graduated at like an unbelievable opposite. Shouts to Kyle Schwede, but returned just about everything else. But what was nice is that freshman class contained some guys who are going to be long-term ballers for Purdue for several years. Connor Wright, Kyle Obernesser, and yourself. And you walked into the gym like a 6'5" or so, super lanky, like giraffe-looking freshman who said he'd played both pins before. We're like, okay, dope. We can find a use for this kid. And fast forward a couple years, you're a two-time first-team All-American middle, and like one of the best college club players in the country. So that's a heck of a growth spurt in a literal and figurative sense. So let's get started with how did you fall into volleyball? Where does your volleyball journey begin?
My volleyball journey began in high school, much like many of the other players in the VLA, but a little later than most. I started playing my junior year of high school, actually, after deciding to kind of break up with baseball. I'd played baseball since I was 5. My dad coached it. My dad played in college, so I'd played baseball all the way up until my sophomore year, and that being a spring sport forced me to not be able to play volleyball. And my dad never really thought of volleyball as an option in middle school, but ironically enough, my brother had just actually finished his 7th grade year at the middle school playing volleyball. So that was something that intrigued me, and I had a couple good friends who were playing volleyball, and I just was like, I'm tall, not as tall as I am now. I was about maybe 6'1", my junior year, 6'2", and just decided in the spring I wanted to do something, and rolled into volleyball practice and hadn't played before, and the coaches immediately started like helping me during tryouts, and I was like, this is kind of weird because they're coaches, but also they're coaching me during tryouts, which um, ended up working out in the long run. But yeah, I just rolled in my junior year and started playing in high school.
Yeah, and just 2 years of high school is very late to the game for what's now a
Yeah.
professional volleyball player. That is very late to the volleyball game. A lot of these kids, start playing club. They're 14s or 15s a year, and you never played club at all.
Yeah, I never played club. My brother played for 2 years, and he played all 4 years in high school. So really, I attribute my joining of the sport to my brother, just because he had started it in the family, and my dad and mom really wanted me to do something because I played golf in the fall, and I played golf all through the winter months, actually, just at indoors doing lessons, training, because at that point that was kind of going to be my long-term plan, potentially play it in college. So volleyball was kind of an afterthought. It was like, great if I can figure it out and play. It's fun, and I did it for 2 years in high school, and then I rolled up to Purdue. So um, the college decision was kind of funny because my final two decisions was playing Division III golf or just going to Purdue for engineering. Little did I know I'd roll up into a great club team and just keep it rolling there.
Yeah, that was kind of similar to when I stumbled upon Purdue. Like I knew that college club was kind of a thing. I knew that schools had club teams, but I didn't know anything about like the scope of it. I didn't know about the level. I didn't know about like what teams were good and weren't good. And it just so happened that Purdue was really good.
Yeah,
Or at least when I got there, they were about to be really good. When you got there, we were already pretty good. Um,
yeah,
and then we didn't slow down once you guys got there by any
no,
means. So your freshman year, you played both pins. You were kind of the spark plug off the bench on the right side when we won the second Big Ten championship in a row.
hmm
And then your sophomore year, my senior year, the thing that we needed was a middle. So
yep,
what went into you making that change, and what is learning that position like once you've already played the game for a few years?
yeah. So in high school, I played outside, and then kind of got delegated to opposite my freshman year as the level of service increased and my passing wasn't really super developed technically because of the lack of
Well,
repetitions.
yeah,
But
you played for 2 years in high
um,
school. That's fine.
yeah, of course. And so I remember kind of rolling into the gym. We didn't have any additional people coming in for middle, and so I think I can't really remember the first time it happened, but I think Ryan Werner might have kind of looked at me because he was coaching and just said, "All right, you're going to try out middle." And I just remember being kind of turned around, like my head was spinning, um, and and you're just trying to follow the game, but you're lacking, and you feel like you're in the way all the time. Um, but with that, I actually that year I started playing with the girls varsity team as a practice
I was going to
player.
ask about that because I attribute a lot of my development as a player to that, like getting to touch the ball in a practice environment that's so much more formal than ours in college club. That's like they really know how to run a practice and how to keep it really organized, how to get good touches and get the best of every minute there. And I got to play a bunch of positions in there, just like you did. And I was going to
Yeah,
ask about how much you think that affected your, overall understanding of the
I
game in college.
I attribute a lot of my success and just development to being able to go into practice there for 2 hours and just get repetitions because Dave and John would
Yeah,
really
shouts to
just throw us into
Shondells.
the yeah, they're great, and they just kind of threw us in. They just wanted us to get repetitions to kind of give their players a different look, but also just keep their players loose and not overload them. And so I ended up getting a lot of middle attacking repetitions, which was the easier part of the game for me. For the blocking and then transition was the biggest thing there was the speed of the game. And so you end up getting conditioned to the speed of the game at the women's level, which in college is very fast, especially
Really
at Purdue.
fast. It's really, really fast.
And and you don't have to worry about jumping high, so you just have to worry about keeping up with the game. And I think that really developed my court awareness, my court feel, and just general movement ability that you don't really need on the pins um, as much because you're not in the middle of the court. You're not in the like you end up being in the way a lot of the time as a middle, and so I think that really helped me develop further skills because it wouldn't happen in just our kind of 4 hours a week or 5 hours a week with the club team.
Right. Yeah, I totally agree. When we were in the gym with John and Dave and the Purdue girls, it was the practice plan that they had laid out was, and they had all the resources. They had managers. They had carts on carts of volleyballs. They had boxes. They had like 3 full courts. They could do drills. They could break down technique at a level that we just couldn't do. They also had film, so they like all the resources that they had at D1. We got to share in just a little bit of that as we got into the gym as
Yeah,
practice players. And I think it helped when
yeah,
we brought that stuff back to our practice too. Like it helped me
oh,
kind
definitely.
of figure out how to run good practice. And by the time you were a senior, that was your job too. And uh, it helps to have seen what a real volleyball practice looks like, to take it back to a bunch of club
Absolutely.
kids who you can just kind of
Yeah.
tell what to do.
Yeah, they run a really tight ship, and also I just ended up listening to a lot to Dave and John and just what they were telling players, being able to kind of steal some of that knowledge. The middle position at the women's level there isn't too much different than at the highest level of men's. I mean, you see the slide, but that's really the only difference. So seeing their blocking strategies, their their tactics on different matchups with players was something really valuable because I had never seen anything like that.
Yeah, that's a great point. There are a lot of differences between the men's and the women's game, but I agree with you that in like as far as the middle goes, other than girls run slide a lot and we just kind of don't, that's about it. Because like you were talking about how fast the game moves at the NCAA, like the Big Ten women's level especially. I think that because the net is so low, it's much lower than ours. It enables the offense to be run even faster
Oh,
in a way
absolutely.
because they can really get the ball out to the pins, and the time from the girls off the floor to attacking the ball is probably even less than it is for us. So it probably did help a lot for you to just be tall and lanky and make moves and not have to jump and touch the top of the antenna every time to learn how to block.
Yeah,
That's
it was worried about your lower half more often than your upper half, which as a middle is the building blocks. If you can't get your feet there, your hands are going to be useless no matter how far you are over the net, especially at the highest level, because guys are looking for that.
very good point. So all that time in the varsity gym is different, but contributes strongly to our time on the club team for sure. I've had a couple guys with some college club experience on the show so far, but I definitely wanted to pick your brain about that because you've played at that level the most recently. I think college clubs is experiencing a ton of growth right now. People are really starting to get how high level it is and how good of an option it is for kids coming out of high school that want to pick like you and like I did just a school because it's a good school, and they like volleyball wasn't that high on the list of their things, like how they were choosing schools, but ended up being my favorite part of my college career. And I know it probably was for you
Yeah.
too. So tell people a little bit about how good the college club level is right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's super competitive. At the highest level, I mean, so your Big Tens and then your West Coast, and then you have a couple East Coast teams that repeatedly show up in the Final 16, Virginia Tech being the one that comes to mind at the beginning. But yeah, it's very competitive. You get a lot of guys who maybe just decide that playing varsity isn't their niche, or they want to go to school specifically, and you um, see guys who are just incredible, and and with that comes just a super uh, competitive field and guys who, I mean, you don't get much more competitive than these tournaments, and you're playing 2 days, um, and I tell guys even when I was overseas in Germany, which I'm sure we'll touch on, when we had these preseason tournaments where we had 3 4 games in a day, that was normal for me. And so
Yeah.
playing these tournaments and these adult tournaments for me was it's not too bad. I mean, the
It's
next
easy.
day is hell. It's horrible.
Yeah.
The next day is horrible, but during the day you're just so conditioned to playing 4 5, sometimes even 6 matches in a day that guys have to be in, I mean, reasonably good shape, and just the competitive spirit drives you. So it's a really high level, and it's great because you can kind of commit to where you want, um, and when you have schoolwork or when you have other commitments, you're not locked in, which is a really nice schedule for a college student.
Yeah, totally. It can be what I think is cool about clubs. It can be kind of whatever your group of guys wants it to be. Like
Yeah,
we didn't have a coach like really officially. It was just a player. Some teams do, some
yeah,
teams don't. You can
yep,
practice kind of as much or as little as you want. You can take it kind of as seriously as you want. But like the teams that are consistently like winning champion conference championships, contending for national championships, there are varsity caliber players in those teams. There are in many cases professional caliber players in those teams. There are increasing numbers of people coming from the college club level and going overseas like you. A lot of them now are getting pulled to the UK to go play grad school.
Yep.
Some that go on and like transfer, and some have played varsity in grad school. In the
Yeah.
U.S., I've seen there are some good players that have come from the college club level.
I mean, a
Phil
fellow Iceman
Dahlhauser,
teammate of mine.
man,
Yeah.
Phil Dahlhauser, one of the
Stat
best beach players of all time. Central Florida club, Stafford Slick, Minnesota club. Like,
Stafford Slick.
yeah,
Yeah. I mean, fellow teammate of mine, Trev Wixorian, or however you pronounce his last name. I've known him for 2 years
swing and a
now and
miss.
still don't
Yeah,
even know.
Trevor Weiskircher, who I want to get on the show at some point, played a year college club at Illinois before realizing he
And
was
then,
a little bit too good for that. Went to Lewis and had a pretty good
yeah,
career.
and then played in Greece. So, I
Right.
mean, you see guys coming out of the woodworks, out of everywhere, and it's pretty cool to see because um, as much as people want to poo-poo or look down upon these club athletes, you'll be surprised if you run into an adult tournament where you see a couple guys that you don't recognize and then ask them where they play and they played club somewhere.
Yeah, that's a great point. So many VLA guys that are club players. Brian Lewis from Ascension, Tomas Goldsmith from Pineapple. Uh, Man, yeah, there are a bunch of them, and I like talking to those guys because, like, you can look down on club players if you want to, but when you go to college club nationals, you're not looking down on them anymore.
Yeah.
That
Or you show up at adult nationals and you're getting torched by 75-mile jump serve from Tomas. It's like, well,
like, where did this kid come
how do
from?
you?
Oh yeah,
Yeah, like, well, yeah, he's destroying you, so you can't really look down on him then.
yeah, that's couldn't have said it better. So before we move off your college career, you by the end, after like kind of our championship era started to graduate, and as far as we got your junior year, your senior year was a little bit of a different experience for you. I was gone. Not that I really contributed all that much to those teams, but like uh, setter, opposite, two outsides that were my age, all gone. Um, you kind of had to put the team on your back that year. You played middle six rotations in many cases. What was that year kind of like, and how your role changed?
Yeah, I mean, my junior year, I was technically the player coach, which was a little bit of a struggle. Like, it was definitely challenging, a definitely brand new experience for me as someone who had never really been professionally coached myself in a volleyball situation. Like, never really had a formal coach except my high school teams, which is pretty low level in my opinion. Really, all of my coaching knowledge came from my father, who coaches baseball and football for 25 years. So it was more coaching fundamentals and how to run drills and hopefully how to get the team together. But my junior year was pretty easy because we had so many leaders on the team as well with me kind of supporting. So my junior year was a wake up call, but it wasn't too bad. And then rolling into my senior year, two of my good friends who I played for 3 years with decided they weren't going to play the second semester, which is our season. So we kind of had to figure out how to put things together. And um, there was definitely some downs at the beginning of the second semester. We were kind of figuring things out where I should play, who should be setting, who should be playing libero, what outsides we were going to have, who we were going to play opposite. And so there was really no set uh, lineup that we really were just trying to figure it out. And so I think my main goal was just to try to get people to buy in and try to come together as a team and kind of have just the same goal, which was to win. I mean, we had a couple key pieces show up randomly. Maxime Larcher, who
That was a great one.
kind of showed up at our practice about 2 weeks in after tryouts and was like, "Hey, I want to play." And I was like,
Like, who are
"Okay,
you?
well, I don't really know who you are." Well, he's an exchange student from France. He's here for just the semester. He's just looking for something to do. He played volleyball a little bit back in France, so he's 6'6". All right, go ahead. You can go practice with the B team, I guess, just to try to give him out of my hair. About a week later, I saw him hitting the ball, and he was touching maybe 11-6 or 11-8. And
Like,
I was
well,
like, all right, you can come start practicing with
like, wait a
us.
minute, is
And
this kid
he was,
eligible? It turns out, yes, he is. Yeah.
yeah, he was eligible, and so we kind of put together a scrappy team, and we ended up figuring out the best setup for us was for me to play middle in the front row. And we had another junior middle, Josh Daly, who had been there for a couple
Shout
years
out to
and
Josh.
was developed.
Josh is listening to this.
Of course, of course. And so he had developed into a good middle, and we had Mark Muir, who had played for 3 or 4 years with the club, so he was experienced, maybe a little undersized, but he had been there before.
Dishing the rock, yeah.
Um, yeah, and then we kind of had uh, three outsides who could all kind of play: Alan, Victor, and oh, who else? Who else do we have out at outside? Oh, Ross Bear, who was a
Oh, yeah,
freshman who
Ross is a
came in.
freshman. Yeah, because
Um,
Jake didn't play that year. That's right. That was a tough year, man.
yep, yeah, and then so we brought up Luca from the B team that year, and he was playing opposite, as well as Maxime, who ended up turning into a pretty crucial player for us down the stretch against the big match to stay in the gold contention of nationals.
Yeah,
So
you beat
we
Oshkosh Day
figured it
too.
out. Yeah, so we
That
figured everything out. Um, Going into nationals day one, we ended up making it out of our pool into a power pool. I think we finished second probably in our pool. I think we went 2-1, and then
yeah,
got put in a power
I think
pool.
you rolled someone in the morning. Then you had Oshkosh and Liberty, and you beat someone in a tiebreaker.
Yeah, and so then we had Liberty and Oshkosh in our power pool. Lost to Liberty in three. Then go play Oshkosh, and here's my favorite story. So both of these games, I'm playing all the way around and hitting Bix out of the back row, and playing probably the best volleyball I'd played of my life. But against Oshkosh in game three, I'm writing the lineups, and so we had just lost game two, so we need to win game three to even have a
To
chance
stay
to make it to
alive.
gold.
Yeah.
And so I screw up the lineup.
Oh, I don't think I
I
knew this
write
story. Oh man, what'd you do?
So I put instead of putting myself opposite of Josh, the other middle, I put myself two rotations behind him, and
Oh,
so we had
whoops.
one,
So you were an
which
outside.
wasn't yeah, so it wasn't a huge issue because I was practicing and playing pins whenever I could. It actually ended up making it so I hit one rotation at outside, one rotation at middle, and one rotation at right side in the front row. And then when we had two middles in the front row, we subbed in a freshman who had just joined the team, Dom
Yeah.
Shortino, who who he was our third middle for us. And so we brought him in, and it's him in the front row with just the outside, and Marks in the front row, who's not a real offensive threat. And so they perfect pass, and I'm like, please, I think I'm in the back row, and I no, I had to come out,
Yeah.
and I was just like, oh, please don't set Dom. They put up a huge double block. Oshkosh, very physical team, and Mark Muir sets Dom, and he tips it zone
Tips it to
four for a
zone
kill.
four.
To get to 8-6, the rotation, we sub him right back off the court, and we end up beating Oshkosh, and then we beat Liberty in a 25-point tiebreaker
You go
to
to
make it to
gold.
gold the next day. And so I think for a team with our talent level that year was a very successful nationals. So we ended up figuring things out in the long run, and I think just getting the team to buy into just a winning mentality, no matter where you were playing, no matter what position you were on, was the biggest thing for the team. If you're on the bench, you're buying into hyping up your teammates and just helping them see the game. And if you're playing, wherever position you are playing, you're just giving it your all. So that was the biggest learning experience, I think. And when you have teams who really, really are embracing that culture, that's where you see the most success. It's not the teams who have the most athletic players or who have the guys who bounce the ball the most. It's the teams who each player on the court and on the bench is really bought into kind of that winning mentality.
I like that. Yeah, I totally agree. I think that's what club comes down to a lot of the time is like once you get to gold, once you get to top 16 on Saturday, literally anyone can win that tournament. It's just
Yeah.
who catches fire and who's together the most, and that's definitely how we were my fifth year, your junior year, because we kind of had no business being there as far as we did, and we got all the way to the
Yeah.
semifinals. So that can totally
Yeah.
happen. So
Definitely.
After college, you moved to Chicago and you started working full time as an engineer. Like professional overseas volleyball was nowhere on the horizon for you, but
It was not.
it was not. But you got connected with the Icemen and started playing some tournaments, some like pretty high level tournaments with the Icemen, and very quickly, just like kind of you talked about earlier, people are looking around like, who the hell is this kid? Where'd this kid come from?
Yeah.
How did you get hooked up with the Ices, first of all?
So my first connection to kind of the adult volleyball world was through Luau actually, and a few of
Chicago.
our Luau Chicago, and so a few of our teammates had played there. I ended up going up and playing a tournament with them. Pretty
Milwaukee, right? Your senior year?
Milwaukee, yeah. So no, it wasn't my senior year. It was the first
Oh,
tournament
is it
of
after?
my after I graduated. So the
Oh,
first
word.
indoor tournament. And
Yeah, I remember
so
that one. That was a good
I
one.
got connected to them, and I played a very good tournament there.
Yeah,
And I
you were a
remember
monster. You
Mitch.
stuff blocked like every ball you
Yeah,
touched. It was awesome.
yeah, it was a fun tournament. And so I got connected through them, and I remember Mitch telling the story to Dave Reed, who's kind of the head of the team. He was telling Dave, he was like, "Yeah, we probably don't want to play against this kid in nationals, so we should probably keep him on the team." And
Oh, I love that.
so I ended up playing a couple tournaments with Luau, and then played against. I think that tournament we did play against Tim um,
Faulkner.
in the finals, and lost to them in three, maybe like 18-16. There was a ball actually I stuff blocked straight down and to a the hitter's piking feet and popped it up middle of the court 10 feet. That would have been for the game point. So
I
that
remember
was
that story.
and I was cramping really hard that game because we had two middles. So it was a good first impression onto the adult volleyball scene. So maybe 2 or 3 months later, Tim had reached out, wanted me to play for the Icemen, and I said why not, and played all through the last season with them, and excited to get back with them.
It was funny because right when I met Dan Palakowski for the first time, we just got to talking because he's a longtime Chicago guy, and our hypothetical discussion was, who do you think are the best seven players, like the best players at each position in Chicago right now? And that excluded all the guys who were playing overseas at the time. And we got to middles, and I was like, dude, sleeper pick this Dave Hancock kid. You're gonna want to know who that name is for the next several years. And he's like, I have no idea who you're talking about. Who on earth is that? And now I think he
Yeah,
knows. So yeah,
yeah,
watching you get to ball out for the Icemen last summer was sick because people started to figure out who you were, and people are like, okay, this kid comes from club. All right, this is for real. So
yeah.
at what point did you realize that you could really go somewhere with this volleyball thing?
Yeah, I think it was while I was actually just on a trip. I was on a 2 week trip with my family after I graduated over to UK. We saw a couple days of Wimbledon, then went to France, saw a couple stages of the Tour de France. So we have a very sports-centered family.
Yeah,
And
tell the people what your dad's sports background really quick.
so my dad played football, basketball, and baseball in high school, then played baseball and tennis in college, and then about 2 years out of college, decided that he was going to compete for the U.S. luge team. So that is the sledding sport where you go down on your back. And he competed for 5 years about on the world tour, so competing all across Europe and the United States, and was a alternate for the 1982 Winter Olympics in Sarajevo. So, and my mom was uh,
Your mom swam at Princeton, right?
all she swam for 2 years and then had shoulders issue and then casually transferred to rowing for 2 years.
Okay, yeah,
So
whatever.
yeah, and then she worked at the U.S. Olympic facilities doing engineering stuff for their swimming team. So
So you're
I come
right,
from a
athletic family.
long history of athletes, and so while I was over there, I was like, man, I'd really like to see more of this, and kind of put everything together of all the guys who are playing overseas, and just was like, at that moment, I think while I was over there, I was like, I'm gonna come back here and play overseas. And so going through the process of signing with an agency and then signing with this team last year brought me kind of where I am today. I just got back about 3 weeks ago from Germany, finishing up my season there. So it was a pretty cool process, and it worked out really nicely with the timing and everything.
Yeah, it sure did. Let's talk about Germany a little bit because your season got
Yeah,
cut a little bit short, like just everyone else's did. The coronavirus
yeah,
canceled, or kind of cut the end off of everyone's season. Just got to come home a little earlier than expected, which is a bummer because you guys were having a heck of a year. Now,
yeah.
you were in the third league in Germany, which is amazing because
Correct.
there actually are three leagues in Germany. That's insane. Um, you were on what was pretty clearly the best team in the third league in Germany, right?
Yeah, so TIFAU Bliesen were located in the southwest of Germany, playing in the one of the four third leagues. So there's four leagues, north, south, east, and west.
Got
And
it.
then there's two second league teams, north and south, and then there's the first league. And so we were playing for a team that actually was one of the only teams that signed international players. Just with their location and their sponsors, they're able to financially do that. And so they're usually at the top of the third league, usually around the top five, or they're usually in the top five of the 10 teams or 11 teams that are in the league. Um, but yeah, we decisively were the best team at the turn, especially the first two games we went 1-1, and then we won 13 games straight.
Whew. Oh yeah.
So those 13 weeks in a row, and pretty decisive victories. Playing with another guy who played a couple matches for LVC, Josh Lynch, who's a guy out of Canada, and one other Canadian player who plays in the volleyball league up in Canada, Lyndon. So we had a pretty solid team. We had three real front runners for just like serving and attacking and just overall athleticism in that league. And so we ended up 12 game winning streak to end up at uh, I think 13-1. Um, and then we ended up losing one match in five there. So we ended up finishing the season at 14-2. We clinched the the championship, the table championship, with 3 weeks remaining, and the last two matches were canceled. So it was a pretty successful season and a great first season.
Very successful. So I talked to Matt August a little bit about this, a rising tide
Yeah,
guy who just spent the year in the Czech Republic, because he played uh, most of all of his film came from playing community college like JUCO in SoCal, and I
yeah,
brought up you because trying to get recruited overseas is really difficult to do when you don't have really film of yourself playing at all, and when you're playing
yeah,
college club. Like I talked about all of the resources that the women's varsity team at Purdue had that we just did not have. Film was a big one. And it's difficult for teams in Europe to kind of figure out what exactly the levels are in the US. Like if you're not a household name coming out of D1 NCAA, then it's hard to kind of figure out exactly what level in Europe you're going to fit into, and especially if there's no film, that was tough. So you went to a league in Germany that you were definitely on the higher end of players for, which is fine because
yeah.
it got your foot in the door. So where does that take you now for the future? Where do you think that can propel you forwards to now?
Yeah, I mean, definitely one of the better players in the third league, maybe, and it's I would say it's a little much lower, maybe not much lower, but lower about a similar tier to the top teams in Division One club. Maybe if you pulled the top five teams from there, that's a similar level that you were playing. So with that, I mean, I got a full season. I was playing every match, so I got a lot of film, a lot of highlights, which I think is really important. Also, just kind of showing teams that you can perform and be successful overseas is a huge thing. A lot of guys get over and they don't really like it, and I think that affects your play if you're mentally not really excited to be there or had success. Then I think that's a huge plus, especially for this past season. So um, hopefully it propels me to another season. I mean, my goal is to play two, maybe three more seasons overseas, just to enjoy it while I can and challenge myself. I think this last year was a good starting point, but I want to be challenged. I think every year volleyball, every step I've taken from high school to college was a huge step, and then from college to the VLA was a huge step. Playing with a lot of D1 guys, a lot of guys who want to keep playing, so they're in shape and they're physical. And so this step was kind of not as challenging for me. So I want to challenge myself, really push myself, and see where that top is. And so with winning this last season, that puts our team in a point to move up to the second league. So potentially staying with that team and playing in the second league, which is where a lot of VLA guys play. A couple guys
Oh yeah.
from Pineapple play over there in the second league, and um, I think that's maybe another good step. But potentially playing in the first league in maybe one of the Scandinavian countries where Will Craft is playing, where the level's a little bit higher, and continue to challenge myself. So I think just having that experience and then having the knowledge of what it takes to succeed overseas was a great first year, and then hopefully can challenge myself in the coming years.
You made a lot of really good points there, and one that I've wanted to talk about with pretty much everyone who I've had that's gone overseas on the show is that the lifestyle and the adjustment thing is not, it's a non-trivial difference. It is a big difference, and you made a great point about people who can just kind of handle it. Like if you can just
Yeah,
handle it, if you can have the right mindset about it, if you like think that you're still passionate about getting out on the floor every time, then that can make a huge difference with where your career can go. And it sounds just from talking to you a bunch while you were over there that you've been a rock star at just mindset and keeping yourself happy and emotionally stable and motivated and just, you're getting paid to play volleyball. It's that's pretty awesome, you know.
yeah, yeah. It's great. I think just being thankful for that, and then just trying to immerse yourself in the culture. It's not the easiest thing, but learn the language, learn a new skill on your laptop when you have time at home. There's a lot of time where you need to fill it, so being disciplined with that time and being willing to be uncomfortable a lot is a skill that you have to develop. I don't think that was something that I had before, but it's something that I embraced, and it really made it a good time while I was overseas. I also especially think really figuring out your coach and your club's mentality and kind of the way they treat their players is a huge thing. You see a lot of teams that are just kind of like, all right, here's your car, here's your apartment, deal with it. This is what you have.
How much
And these
was
other
your
teams
how
were.
much was your agent able to help with figuring that piece out?
So it's funny. I didn't have much of an option, but I know my agent had sent players here before, and from the interview with the player manager for the team, went really well. He seemed very welcoming, and so that was reassuring because I didn't really have any options besides this club. So it ended up working out for me. I got lucky, but I think that's a huge role. I mean, having an agent that you can trust, or having contacts who had been there before that can give you an idea of the club is really valuable. So reaching out to Americans and Canadians and anybody who's played overseas just to get a feel for the club is also a super valuable resource for players who are wanting to go overseas.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I think that's really good advice for anyone seeking it, especially anyone like that played at our level who's interested in pursuing it. Just your proof of concept that it's very possible. The track to success is totally there. There's just a couple of things you've got to do. You've got to put in the work, and it's a dream that can very easily be realized. I think that's a point that Starkey made when I had him on the show. So like
Yeah,
these things are not as out of reach as you think they are. And now
yeah.
now with what we're trying to build in the VLA, we're hoping that somewhere down the road you don't even have to go overseas if you really want to pursue it. So
Yeah,
that's the
hopefully you can
dream.
call up a buddy and see, hey, like what can we do, and then you're playing in the United States, which would be great.
So speaking of which, you're getting on the floor for the Icemen as soon as the events are allowing us to do so. We
Yeah,
don't know anything else about our calendar as of this recording. All the events we have scheduled right now we think are going to happen. So we're hoping to see you out there playing a bunch of volleyball. But what's a cool thing in your situation is that you started your engineering career right out of college, and you can come back
Yep.
for the summers after your overseas season and be an intern at the same company and make a little bit of money
Yeah.
doing that. That's phenomenal.
Yeah, so I'm just getting back, and I actually start in a couple weeks for working a supply chain job for a company I worked for a year and a half outside of when I graduated, and so it makes it really nice. I can come home, make some money, and then also play on weekends for the VLA. So stay in shape, and then ideally, in a couple of years, hopefully can stick around and play and then work at the same time.
That would be magical, dude. You've got the blueprint.
Yeah.
So before we get you out of here, you mentioned your golf game earlier. What do you think the odds are that you're the lowest handicap golfer in the VLA? What's your number at right now? I haven't
I
played with
think
you in a
my
couple years. You probably didn't get
Yeah,
to
I
swing the club
haven't
much in
played.
Germany.
No, I didn't. We did as a team. We went out to the nearby
Oh,
golf
did you
course.
just dust everyone?
What? Well, it was we did a group lesson, and there was one player on the team who had played golf before, and there was nobody on the team, or maybe one player on the team who knew who Martin Keimer was,
Oh,
which is
come on.
the highest ranked German golfer. So I think golf is pretty hit and miss in Germany. So yeah, I didn't get to play much over there. But last summer I played a decent amount, and I think my handicap was around 1.2 or
Oof.
1.3. So I don't know. I'm trying to think if anybody else plays golf. I would bet pretty strongly that I'm the lowest handicap, but
You
hopefully
might be.
somebody else can see this and challenge me, and we'll see. We'll settle it.
I like that. Who wins in an 18-hole match? You or Jack Heron?
I think Jack. I think the last time we played, he's pretty confident in his golf game. He played pretty well. He's got some good long irons, and
Yeah.
it would be interesting now because I've definitely gotten better since I graduated college. I played a lot more these past couple of years, but I haven't played for a year now, so we'll see how things go.
I want to be a spectator. Someone giving strokes in a match against you two guys. That would be a lot of fun.
Yeah, right.
Well,
That would be fun.
by the time this podcast comes out, I will have released to the world that I'm moving from Detroit to back to Chicago. So I'll be around. We
Yeah,
can play a lot more
heck
golf
yeah,
this summer than the last couple of years.
absolutely. Get down to Harborside.
Oh yeah, please. I'm super stoked for that. Well, this isn't a golf podcast, but uh,
Yeah,
it would be fun to get some VLA guys in on the golf action. That'd be a fun thing to do when we're at some of the events.
yeah,
You
that
never
would be
know.
good. Yeah.
All right, Dave. Before we get you out of here, where can the people follow you? Where can the people follow along with what you got going on?
Instagram at underscore Dave underscore Hancock or Dave underscore Hancock underscore.
It's that one. I
I
have it
make
on the screen here for the people.
Yeah, I make a lot of food content, so if you're interested in that, you can come follow along.
Yeah, a
Um,
Renaissance
but
man
other than
baking
that,
bread and hitting golf balls.
yeah, but other than that, find me number 11 or 16 on the court this summer with the VLA.
Dope. Thanks for joining me, buddy. We're excited to see you and the Iceman this summer. I can't wait to get back out there. So I'll
Absolutely.
see you soon after we can get back outside. All right.
Yeah, thank you for having me, Rob.
All right. Thanks, guys, for joining us. We'll see you next time.